Hey folks, it's Tulsi Noreen. I want to take the next 15-20 minutes or so to walk you through some of the new features we added into Lifecycle Manager, and that's the LMX add-on. Really make this practical to show you how somebody like myself might want to prepare for a client meeting. Getting all those various items in place, such as getting the assessment done, building out a roadmap, ultimately building things in the budget view and preparing the deliverables. And what are some of the items for you to actually keep in mind? So let's go ahead and hop in. So right now I'm sitting at the main dashboard for one of my clients. And really at a glance here, we can see some things that's going to be of importance for us to actually keep in mind as we're doing this. We already have a meeting actually set up in this case for a client that's about to happen on September 15th. This seems to be some sort of cybersecurity check-in. Also build out, we're going to have a major review for this customer, what we call the technical alignment or technical service review happening at the end of the year. But further as you get into the tool, you'll notice a few things here. Number one, goals is something that is actually new with the LMX capability. That is at a cursory glance to show you, are you actually addressing and meeting these goals and how close are you maybe in terms of achieving them? Items that is related to the roadmap that is happening right now for this quarter we'll showcase here. So right now we're in the third quarter. We got a number of items that we have completed. We have one on hold. We have a VoIP rollout that's actually in progress at the moment. If you have recently done an assessment, the most recent assessment will be shown here. You, of course, can click and take a look at the past assessment. So in case that you're kind of curious, how was the client environment, based on the various sort of domains that we evaluate in the past, how are they differs maybe to the most recent assessment? You can get a sense of idea and see, hey, are we improving things? Are we not improving things? And of course, you can drive into the assessment view here for further details on each one of those items. What I found interesting, and it's something that I really like, is being able to actually track, contracts, all of those agreements, additions you folks might have out there, anything from things like VoIP service, printer service, third-party agreements that is not necessarily with you as the MSP, but the client might be owning the contract directly. Simply want to give you an idea, here are some of the ones that's coming up in the next 90 days that we're going to want to keep an eye out on. And here is some of the ones that is already actually expired. Now, we also have some more details here in terms of what we call these styles that's going to be bubbling up risk. And this is the core capability within Lifecycle Manager Pro. And of course, that is here within this platform because LMX is simply an add-on. Really at a high level, when you're looking at some of these data points, look at very obvious things like machine that is high risk, that is no longer in support, or you have systems that might have an unsupported operating system. We have slow machines. There's basically some math and some calculations that we are doing underneath each one of these tiles to provide that sort of for the insights. Other ones that might be very helpful in knowing the sort of timeline that we are on right now, October happening, going to be next month, and Windows 10 coming to end of life. So if you have any sort of stragglers out there with Windows 10 machines, this is a good way to actually see this. Just know, as we're looking at this in context to a client right now, you may want to take a look at the strategy overview and take a look at this insight board because we're gonna extrapolate every single client and look at a higher level at that point so you can actually see, well, do we have any sort of clients now in our mix that simply have Windows 10 machines where this sort of insights will show up? And of course, there's other ways for you to actually do that within the hardware view as well. And something that hasn't changed is, of course, allowing you to build your own insights, and you can simply do that from the top here by creating a new insights. And you have various ways of actually doing this, where I can go ahead and set I want to actually add some policy based on servers or workstations and so on. I mix and match those items as I actually see fit and create my own insights that get propagated across all the clients. All right, now moving into things here, one of the first thing you're going to want to do is provide an assessment. And the way generally you're going to want to do this is have a look at some of the templates that we have. There's about 10 templates come with LMX today that you're going to want to go through and see, hey, is some of the data points these templates are utilizing, can we actually benefit from that? Alternatively, of course, you can actually create your own assessment. So I'm going to take you into one that I already have. Go in here. I mark this as complete, but you can simply, ultimately head back into any one of these assessment and go and change maybe your decisions and or maybe your findings has changed for whatever reason. Uh, each one of these templates will come into various sections. So I have things about foundational services, maybe us as the MSP is providing. Is the client in our good or a better or a best package? Maybe there is an option there for some of the agreements additions to rope these folks into. There is things on terms of what is going on with the client's application, advanced technology, are they leveraging things like IoT and RPAs and so on and so forth. But as you're looking at these items, do your best to fill this out. Some of them are going to be quite obvious as maybe you take a client over, they might not necessarily be aligned to your ideal stack or your ideal backup in this case. You score those things, you might be okay with that risk. You might be okay with that for a period of time. But the goal here is anything that might be in a sort of at risk or needs attention, you're going to want to hopefully move those things into the satisfaction or satisfactory category in this case. You can add more to this list, right? So, I mean, these are some few options that we've given you. You can add more response. You can weight those response a little differently. And at the end of the day, now you can go ahead and take a look at the report. You can download a full assessment report or a comparison report. In this case, you'll notice there's two columns in here. This is back in May when we have done this assessment, and this one over here is one of the latest one we have done. Um, the other thing is there's a summary report in here as well that you can actually grab. But once you've done that work, you're going to want to take action on this stuff, right? And some of these actions, it might be new billable items that you're going to be, providing to the client via a roadmap because there's clearly some gaps. There's some other things in here that is not going to be billable because guess what? As part of the existing MSA the client have signed, you folks now need to actually get that work done. So there's a misalignment, in which case you might need to create a PSA ticket. So at time of recording this video, and this is the first week of September. Today we support ticket creation with Autotask PSA and ConnectWise Manage. There is Halo PSA going to be happening very shortly, and there's other PSAs on the roadmap as well. Other thing is in terms of getting an item added to the roadmap, you can easily do that from here, and we call roadmap items initiatives. You can go ahead and click on the plus button. You can actually create a new one. There's about 8 to 9 templates I want to say already curated for you, so you can select an initiative that might be a wrong server replacement or 365 upgrade. My sort of tip here for you is look through all the various sort of items you guys typically do, right? And you might want to look at a service desk to figure out, well, what are the typical projects we do? Come up with a list, build those templates out within the platform. And I would say maybe you want to ad hoc that or you want to do that all at once. That's going to be your call. But simply getting these things within the platform gonna, really allow your team to pick on an item and within 1 or 2 clicks it actually get added to the roadmap. That's gonna really speed up things for you. If you have any sort of existing things on the initiative, well, we can, or sorry, on the roadmap, you can simply take a risk here and link it to that existing initiative. So that's a way to actually look at it as well. And of course, during the assessment, if you folks are adding things like public and internal commentary, those things can be out here for giving you some more guidance as to, further action or what you might actually want to do. All right, now with that in mind, and you have actually built this out, I would say at this point I will typically move into goals. Now you'll notice I am not necessarily moving through this platform linearly, and yes, you can move through it linearly. You don't necessarily need to go through it the way I am doing it here, because there's many potential different ways for you to actually execute your various sort of tasks within this tool. The reason I'm going to goals, right? What generally might inform me by begin working on some of those items from the assessment and begin adding things to the roadmap, I'm gonna want to get a sense of idea, well, for this client, Sugar Lip Systems, what are the strategic imperatives do they have for maybe this fiscal year or maybe future years as well? I'm begin lobbing those things down, and this is gonna really test your ability. Do you really know this client? Have you taken the time to maybe talk to line of business owners, senior executives, folks in management and decision-making capability? Have you perused their website? Have you actually take the time to understand what is maybe going on with their competitors and so on? and get these goals built out. And I want to say, take the time and put the necessary thought and research into place because you don't want to get this wrong. The last thing is you're sitting across a client and you're showing goals and they're, you know, looking at you, they're smirking and knowing that maybe you haven't really done your research, you really haven't known us, and you're putting work, you're trying to get ready for a meeting. So we want to actually get this right. So what I'm going to suggest here is items that you added onto the roadmap, any items that might belongs in a goal. So let's say, for example, this client have some legacy system, and one of the things that they have raised with us as the MSP, hey, we need to reduce our costs. We're spending way too much money on IT operations because we need to actually sustain these older systems. Maybe they have some old IBM AS400. Potentially, we need to transform and modernize that system because it's the maintenance is costing us so much. You might have a slew of initiatives to actually tackle that. That is not a simple project, right? You might be doing things like um, moving away from that system. You might be creating custom apps. You might be migrating data. You might be moving some of those apps in the cloud. Some of them might need to move to traditional sort of x86 hardware. But whatever the case might be, layer those items on as initiatives in here and then set up the schedule accordingly. Who is the owner in this case for those items internally that will keep on track? Some of you is going to be the single person. For the larger MSPs, there might be a slew of owners here. And of course, setting things like priorities and so forth. It's a little more than that, right? Of course, I can come in here and link additional initiatives. I can see the existing one on the roadmap here, and I can easily pick it and add it to the list. You have some options as you're doing this work. You can head into the actual goals here. Let me pull this up so you can actually see this. There we go. And at this point, if you want to begin fulfilling well, when is the sort of target period for that goal? Are you on track and so forth? Those can be updated. These are the same initiatives that we were taking a look at earlier. They're just in a different sort of layout here. But initiatives now will have action items, right? There might be a slew of things internally you need to do that a client might need to do. It's always a great idea to actually layer those things out. And if I need to edit, update any one of those items, I can. You'll notice even within here, I can pin them. I can create a ticket as well within the PSA, and I can some of these items, these tasks might be linked to multiple goals, which is kind of cool. You can have a single action items, and you can actually tie various sort of goals to those action items. There is this goal is actually, linked into a meeting, part of our technical review. So I can actually see that that's going to be happening at the end of the year. If I go into the meetings area, or if I had when we saw those items on the overview page as well, this is the same meeting. And again, you can actually open that up. You can link additional meetings and so on. But goals are incredibly important, right? I cannot stress this enough. So you can actually show a client that you really understand their business and what's going on. And over time, you're going to want to hop back in here, update those goals. And I will say, after every meeting, right, as you're gaining insights from those meetings and you're taking your notes, head back to the office, put the time in and update the goals because there's clearly they're going to be insights shared by your clients during those meetings. We don't necessarily want to lose sight of those things. Okay, let's quickly talk about roadmaps. Now, roadmaps is, well, no big surprise because roadmaps been in this tool for a while. This is a feature as part of both Lifecycle Manager Pro, and of course, it's available once you have the LMX add-on as well. It's simply carry right through. There's a bit of a Kanban board in which you can, move those items across as you see fit. You want to open up an initiative here and make adjustments. So in this case, we are doing an endpoint protection rollout. We're replacing a legacy, maybe antivirus in either EDR solution. This is tied to a goal of improving the cybersecurity posture, so we can clearly delineate that. And now we have the actual what type fees. We also have things like the subscription fees moving forward. And of course, I can link that to a ticket. I can create action items and so forth. I can link additional assessment item that was, contributing to the goal. And I even have the ability to actually link assets. Well, maybe I'm gonna be pricing this thing out by endpoints. If I was to actually do that in here per asset, it might make sense for me to actually link those assets because that's how we will calculate in this case what the actual total recurrent service will be based on the number of assets. And you have various ways of actually, switching the views, I would say this view is probably a little more nicer because if you have clients with a lot of goals in a roadmap, you may want to actually see subsequent years and so on and so forth. All right, moving on to some other interesting things within this platform. And as we are getting prepared for this meeting, right, there's going to be some few additional things we're going to want to lob into this tool. So contracts happen to be something part of Lifecycle Manager Pro. And of course, within LMX, you can actually take this capability further, and you're going to see how that's going to come into play once we get into budget here in a second. But today from Autotask, PSA, and ConnectWise Manage, things like the agreements, additions, and so on, we will actually suck right across. So if you have things on the MSA on maybe some sort of compliance add-on as an agreement addition, those things going to come into here. My suggestion to you is to lob additional items. So whatever those third-party items might be, it might not necessarily be sitting with you folks as the MSP. It might be like a VoIP service, or it might be a CRM subscription that the client actually have those in place so you know what you're spending on it, and you can simply adjust these things over time as well. The more details you have, how they're utilizing the service, what benefit they're getting from it, might put you in a position to offer alternative or look at this across all your clients, and might behoove you as the MSP to look into forming a partnership with a third party vendor. For contacts, once you tie your CSP tenant, we're going to begin bringing in things like their 365 license, things like MFA status and MFA methods being utilized, and of course, what sort of licenses associated to each one of these employees. These are the employee lists getting pulled right out of the PSA. Again, ConnectWise Manage, Autotask PSA supplying that. The more we have details on that, the better you can actually have conversations on license renewal. Hey, do we need to re-up some of the license and so on and so forth. Now, this is going to get us into budgets. Now, the budget board largely are dynamically built because of some of the work you have done ahead of time. So contracts, well, we just spoke of this. Here is all the various sort of agreements. Can get a sense of idea when some of these renewals are coming up, what the value is going to be at that point. I can also, look at this from the other sort of view where take a look at roadmap items. Any items that might be more in terms of maybe a technical debt, they haven't been scheduled as yet on the roadmap. Some of those items that we have on the roadmap already, so the client can get a sense of idea, what those items are. So you'll notice, let's take a look at this. The VoIP service in here, we're rolling this out. There's that initial part. There was a CapEx fee plus a monthly subscription is part of this value. But you'll notice going forward, that value is repeated because that's an agreement where we're going to have maybe 12 or 24 or 36-month contract with that vendor. We simply want to actually showcase that on a roadmap moving forward. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at some of the data point here. This is going to be that sort of running budget moving forward. So it lets the client know what are they need to expect. And, even some of the big numbers that you're seeing here, well, guess what? That client in this case have a contract, I think, on their property lease that's going to be happening in Q1 2026. And in cases like this, you're going to want to stay clearly away from any sort of large IT initiatives because you're not going to necessarily be friends with the CFO at that point if you're asking for, well, other large capital expenditures to happen during the same time as some of the major ones that the organization actually have. So that's budgets. Now we're gonna get into things in terms of before we plan for this meeting, and we're gonna head here soon. I'm gonna want to actually gain some additional details. So the first way we're gonna be doing that is through Client IQ. For a lot of you folks as the MSP and account managers, especially junior account managers, you're not gonna necessarily have all the insights as to somebody who is very tenured within the business and really know the client and maybe potentially really know the industry. So this is our first take and begin providing some valuable insights as to, what is happening with the client right now based on publicly available information on their website and so on. What is generally happening with their industry. So hopefully this begin giving you talking points. Now to help with that, we're going to begin giving you suggestive questions, topics to talk to the client about. And again, that sort of goal feature is here. Now the goal feature will be incorporate in this generative AI capability here so we can extrapolate for the details to provide to you. Are we at risk of not meeting those goals or potentially things for you to keep an eye out on? But that is Client IQ in a nutshell. We also have this analytics capability, which is one of my favorite features within this platform. And here's several things that I like about this area. Number one, if you have things like Crowhoot today, things like CSAT score will be brought across, and there's a CSAT customer experience area to actually provide that. But this service quality, it's a gold mine of data, right? So a lot of times, sometimes we walk in meetings and we are honestly surprised because maybe we are going in with the indication that, yeah, we are doing a superstar job for this customer, and that is not what is, being provided as feedback for us during the meeting because there's clearly issues that was happening on the service desk, maybe on the service delivery side. Potentially, we did not got purview to that, or we did not have enough data points. And that's what the goal in terms is here for us to provide you some further insight. So what was ticket volume looking like in the last while, right? Who is the usual suspect submitting tickets? What are those ticket type, ticket subtype? Which board are they on? How are we doing in terms of response time and SLA and metrics like that? What's generally happening, service resolution or resolution time for various type of tickets. And even down, well, something that I really like in here is getting a sense of idea, well, which tickets are we really waiting on the client to respond on? Which one are we waiting on vendors to respond on, and so on and so forth. So sometimes we are in breach of an SLA because we are at the mercy of the vendor. We might be breaching an SLA because clearly the client is not necessarily, being as responsive as we need them to be. And we want to raise these things up, right? So it's a shared responsibility, right? We are trying to do a good job, by being the MSP, but we also need the client to be living up to, their side of the bargain as well. So with these insights in mind, I'm able to now, go ahead and schedule a meeting. Now, the main area in here, and of course, you can template these things out. So let's go ahead and take a look at this annual review that I already set up ahead of time. So you got various sort of meeting types within the platform. So it can be a phone call or project review and so on. Here is the sort of agenda that we have for the meeting. And a bit of a pro tip for you folks is when you build this item out once, go ahead and actually save that as a template within the tool. That way you don't need to redo this for every one of your clients. Of course, you can actually indicate, who on your end is about to meet with a client, who you're meeting with on the customer side. The other thing is after that meeting, as you're going to be updating goals and so on, my suggestion is update this, who really attended the meeting? Did they brought some additional folks that you typically wasn't actually expecting to be part of that meeting? And maybe they share some valuable insights and so on. What goals are we going to be discussing? The deliverables going to be the reports that we actually build out within this area that we're going to be linking to this meeting, any additional attachments and so on. And of course, you folks know you can actually add this to your Outlook or your Google Calendar, and from there you can actually add your web conference and so on. Now, after your meeting, and especially if you're doing a web meeting, my suggestion to you is to get your AI companion, your notes and so on, and get that pasted here and add your own flavor to that, right? And you might actually have potential action items now based upon that meeting you're going to want to actually create in here. For other folks, a lot of you might need to get some of the data into the PSA. So what we did in here is you can link it to a PSA ticket. This is where you might be doing things like time entries and so on. Yeah, after the meeting, we take the client out to lunch and so forth. Well, guess what? I need to actually get paid for that and reflect that properly in the PSA. So I'm going to want to link to that ticket. So yeah, that's the agenda feature. Now, apart from that, now it's going to get us into things like deliverables, and you got a couple ways of doing this, right? I see some MSPs, they will, share this ahead of time in those meetings, and this is what we're going to be discussing in an agenda. So here is some of the data we want to share with you beforehand. Some of them will actually do this after the fact, and it's your call. There is no true way that work best, and it's really going to come down to your experience and what your clients might be expecting of you. So within the report here, there is a lot of items you can potentially add to the report builder from a cover page. You want to add things like hardware report, software report, budget, contract report, and so on and so forth. My suggestion is before you simply click on, save and download that report, take the time to actually adjust these reports. So some of these reports can get pretty verbose, and maybe that's the intent. But other reports says, hey, you know what? We need to keep these report at a summary level. So what I'm going to make sure I do for the various reports is just to include just the overview summary versus get into the details. But you can actually do both, right? You can add a budget twice. You can include a one page for the overview, and then maybe they follow on later on, going to be the details and so on. And of course, you can structure how much data you want to show for the period. You're going to be able to see the same thing for roadmap and so on and so forth. So when you do download that data points now, it will be in terms of going to actually show the client what they really going to find valuable versus you're showing so much data in a report and it's cognitive overload for the client and they're not necessarily getting the value maybe what you intended for them to receive. All right, so far we talk about a lot of things, right? We spoke about goals, client IQ, roadmaps that was there in Lifecycle Manager Pro is there now. We got a meetings, you got budgets, and so on and so forth. But there is a couple more things I think you should folks should be aware of. Number one, usually before I head into a meeting, right, I'm gonna want to make sure I am actually up to speed. And what I mean by that is, in my past life as a sales rep, I will typically have a binder or a book that contain information about the customer, their work and relationship with people. What do they like to do on a weekend? How many kids they have? How long they've been married? When their anniversary is coming up? This is a good way of keeping that. It nothing defeats account management when you lose notes like this. Imagine you are the account manager, you build a relationship over time, you capture all these details. Now you transfer the account to somebody else within the organization, and this details was in your mind, it was in the back of your head. That sort of tribal knowledge is extremely valuable. So store it within a platform. That way you can refer to this moving forward. And in the case you transfer this account to somebody else, well, they don't necessarily need to learn this all of a sudden, right? They can actually at least know who they're speaking with, what are these folks' lifestyles, so they can actually have some great icebreaker conversation. The other thing to keep in mind is being able to see this across the board, right? As an account manager or somebody who is managing the customer success folks, I may want to generally see across the board, what are all of those meetings that we have coming up? Are they in fact happening? So I can actually touch base with my employees and so on, and I can see the ones that we have completed and so on and so forth. So that's one item in there. The other bit in here is to be able to actually see action items as well across the board. And I'm going to also want to be able to actually see this from a roadmap point of view. What are all the things that we are actually surfacing as recommendations? And in fact, are we seeing traction? Is the client buying into the various things that we are raising, or they're simply not? So that's another idea to look at this. And of course, we can actually select members of our team if we are having cadence with them to see are we in fact making progress or not. But yeah, that was it at a high level that I wanted to actually share on this quick chat. Maybe that's a little more over than the time I was expecting to do this in. But hopefully, folks, this provide you with a little more clarity how you might want to potentially utilize the LMX add-on capability, how you generally might want to maybe increase your usage of Lifecycle Manager Pro. And to be fair, there's a lot of things that we did not touched on, right? We did not went into speaking about, some of the capabilities within hardware and software. We have other videos out on YouTube that discuss those items, including a marketplace here where you can actually extend service protection on infrastructure like servers and workstations and network equipment and so on. All of that in here, and including disposing of assets for free. And that's a big area to actually discuss with your clients if you're not doing that already today. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video. For folks that is looking at this, I hopefully you have found this valuable. There's going to be more to come as we add more capabilities within the platform. I'm going to make an active approach to at least record snippets or something entirely like this and have it posted up on YouTube. So if you're browsing, you're kind of curious, maybe you're stumbling on something, you're not necessarily sure on the path to take, you can use this as a bit of guidance to actually make the best of Lifecycle Manager. All right, take care, folks, and we will chat again soon.